Okay, so I was thinking about this whole thing about immortality, and it occurred to me on the plane, and I had all of these weird kind of scenarios, right? So one of the things that came to mind, I don't know why, but I was thinking, well, shit, what if it was like that movie Flight, and where everything just went sideways, and in the blink of a moment.
That was the one with the drunk pilot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in the blink of a moment, you have everything going sideways.
Right.
How would I survive that? Would I survive it? Like, he obviously survived it, but would I survive it? And
Well,
then,
he was the drunk pilot.
well, he was a drunk pilot, but he survived it. Is my
Right.
point. My point is there's plenty of people that did not survive it.
Yes, and there
So-
are those that did.
Yes. So I'm like, okay, would I be the survivor or the non-survivor? Number one.
Right.
And then I said to myself, why am I even thinking about this?
What even brought this up in your
This
train of
is
thought?
very bizarre. Well, I was like, well, there's a little bit of turbulence. So I thought, but I don't really get nervous about that. It's kind of like you always have turbulence, and they're like, put your seatbelt on. It's like, what is that gonna do? If you're going down, the seatbelt might mitigate a little bit, but you're kind of screwed, right? So maybe that was going through my mind. And then I started thinking about all of the people that we've lost, and I would say lost because although we like to say it's they're with us in spirit, air quotes, it's different, right?
Well, they're no longer sharing the earth with us. Yeah.
So yeah, it's different, and so there's not like a physical feedback, like you have to like search for a different connection with those folks, and not saying that you can't get that connection, but it's a little different. There's dreams, and there's waking consciousness,
memories,
and things like that. There's flashbacks, there's all that stuff. And then I started thinking about talking about. Sounds a little cray-cray, so I don't want to say talking about, but I do want to say like thinking about, well, what about this whole idea of immortality? Because we do really get to have it both ways. If we say, well, the corporal body, I guess that's redundant, but anyway, the body, is like in the ground or fired off or something.
No longer needed.
And then you just continue to exist. Isn't that nice?
On some level of consciousness as a soul or something.
Isn't it nice that we just continue to perpetuate this whole idea that it never ends, because we never want it to end.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever that is, we never want that to end. And so it's a nice story.
It's the part that we can't really wrap our minds around as living beings. The idea of actually non-existence is
right.
Very difficult to wrap our minds around.
But what if, I don't know, it's interesting. So maybe not immortality, more of like, well, what if this is it?
So what if after we physically die, there is no further consciousness one way or another?
I think there is, but I don't know that there is in the same. I mean, there's energy, which is, I believe that truly. Like, there is energy. I just don't know what form that takes.
it may not be like a consciousness of its own self,
Yes.
as we think of like a consciousness of our own self.
Right.
Okay, like, okay, here I am, I've passed, and now I'm at the pearly gates, and now, yeah, I'm being decided, shall I go to heaven or hell, or, like, that would take a very sort of human-esque kind of consciousness to even
Right.
think about.
Right. See, now I think that we could do this as like a little podcast, really, and
A
like
little blog on mortality.
like nightly, and we could just like post it on like YouTube or something like that. I think that that would be quite interesting, but that's just sort of like a random musing.
I like that you had even time for the musing, because sometimes I feel like, and this is kind of a judgment I probably shouldn't make or have no right to make, that you don't have a lot of time for musing, because, like, for instance, I muse, my best musings is when I'm like alone in a room in silence. And I'm just like looking around. Like the other day, you came in and you were doing your music set, and I'd gone into the guest room
Yep.
to read my novel, and then I put my novel down, and I was just like looking around at my books and like looking at the ceiling and looking at the art and stuff. And you came in, and it's like, oh, what are you doing? And I was like, thinking. You know, like I wasn't really reading my book at that time, but each title of each book brought me to some other thought, you know, like it was kind of a stream of consciousness. And I do my best thinking then. And I worry sometimes that you don't really have that time, because you're always in a song, you're always in a music, you're always on a podcast, you're always like engaged somehow with your devices.
But I am, but that is what allows me to go into those thoughts.
Yeah, but how is that not distracting you from having a thought?
It's not.
Huh.
It enables me.
Oh, that's funny to me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think that that is a good kickoff for our
good.
nightly podcast.
You know, like one of the first things I did when you left was I cleaned the sheets.
Uh-huh.
And one of my thoughts, whilst you were gone, like as I was doing that, and so pleased because I was going to have fresh, clean sheets, and not that I wanted to get rid of your smell or anything on the sheets, but I like that, like in that sort of putting my house in order, tidying things, you know, like for my 2 days of just like being in the house by myself. I thought, this is so grim, but it's like, I hope she doesn't like pass on her trip, because then I will have wanted like the smell of her on her sheets and her pillowcases. Here I am like, oh, I love to like clean all the sheets and make it all, you know, like.
Well, I'm sure you could have found some ratty-tatty shirt that I
your clothes
still
and
want.
stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
there were still your clothes on the floor and
Yeah.
everything I could have totally gotten. But still, that's the kind of thing that occurs to me. And I don't consider it in a grim way. I just kind of think to myself, like, oh, well, hopefully that's not the last time she's ever actually been in these sheets. That I've just now cleaned all fresh and everything.
But it's kind of weird that you had that thought.
Well, but I have these thoughts often. I mean, not like necessarily always about that, but like I enjoy my thoughts, though. I have vast, vast, vast thoughts. And I think that's sometimes why, like, chatter and sound and music and things is sort of vexing to me, because it sort of hijacks my thoughts. My thoughts are important. I should write my thoughts down. Or videotape them. We'll see how your video blogging went. But thank you for sharing some important thoughts. I like that.
We'll see what
I
we
like
have
that best.
tomorrow.
I do. I like that best. Like knowing what your train of consciousness sort of musings are. I don't think I hear enough of your musings.
I always know what they are.
But I mean, like, to share them.
Okay.
I like to hear people's musings, where it's just neither here nor there. It's just sort of like, and then this occurred to me, and then
I thought
I went
about
to this, and then it's like, oh, and then I was like, oh, that led me to this, and I'm like, I wonder how it is that I am here in this thought. How interesting.
And here we are.
Yeah.